multiculturalism is failing because you need one culture to cohesively work together towards one goal. If everyone's working towards different goals,
I just
can't you have multiculturalism with assimilation? Can't you have a melting pot?
That's what we have in Australia, though. We are a multicultural society in Australia. I think we do have some issues where some cultures might not integrate as well as other cultures, but on the whole, we are a real melting pot of cultures here, and I think people could say it's largely been successful, that we respect and we share values, but there are so many different cultures that work harmoniously and live harmoniously together here.
That's the problem. People don't actually know what multiculturalism is. In Canada, if you ask people, they'll tell you multiculturalism is people of different skin colors coming into Canada and then assimilating to the culture. That's not what it is. What multiculturalism means is literally multiple cultures in one area. That doesn't work. You can have one culture that plenty of people come to and assimilate to, that has the same values, that has the same laws. You cannot have multiple cultures working towards the same goals because they are going to have different needs for the laws of the nation. They're going to have different needs for the schooling.
How do you see Australia then? I know you've only just arrived, but we are different cultures living together here in Australia.
Yes, and like much of the West, that isn't going to last for very long. We look at this and we say the multicultural experiment is working because it's been working for 20 years. That's not going to last. We are living off the fumes of greater civilizations. We are living off the fumes of Western culture. And once Western culture becomes the minority view in Western nations, you're not going to have that culture that values freedom of speech. You're not going to have that society that values rule of law. You're not going to have that society that values democracy. It is all about having at least more than 50% of your population that believes in Western culture and Western culture alone.
But Lauren,
you can't
in Australia,
have multiculturalism where Western culture is the minority.
But Lauren, in Australia, we have a very ordered migration system. We know who's coming into the country. We have a process of vetting people, whether they're coming through the humanitarian intake or coming through as economic migrants or under short-term migration program. You know, we know precisely who's coming in here and whether they are suitable to assimilating and valuing what we value. So how can you have a problem with that? What's an issue with having people from...
You still have these no-go zone areas, much like the rest of the West. Sure, it may be going at a slower rate because you have vastly slowed down your immigration here in Australia. You've stopped the boats, so it's going at a slower rate than the rest of the West. But eventually, certainly if you keep going leftward in progressive ideology, it will speed up and you'll be like France. You'll be like Molenbeek and these areas in Europe where so many people have come in and just created their own little communities where Western European values no longer are espoused. What's fascinating about Australia is you have a Multiculturalism Act that defines your multiculturalism as we do not identify as a culture, we identify with values. But all of the values that are listed are values that are inherent to Western culture and no other culture like it, like the value of free speech, like the value of rule of law, like the value of democracy. These were all things that came from Europe and all things that came from the West. And culture is defined as a shared set of values. So how can you say you are a multicultural nation when you value only things that Western culture has created?
Well, I think there's multiple cultures within the West. There's no one Western culture. There's so many different cultures that fall within the West that also share the same values of free speech, democracy, around the world.
Such as?
Equality. Well, throughout the West, there's different cultures within Europe, that Greece, Rome, places
yes, but
where
they're all part of the West.
But there's more than one culture in the West.
Greece and Rome were part of the West.
But there's more than one culture in the West. That's what I began by saying.
Sure, there are subcultures of Western culture, but Western culture is the encompassing culture.